In this video, I'll be showing you how to deal with the uncanny valley problem or AI generated look problem within AI art, or at least doing my best to do so. And a lot of people get this entirely wrong, messing with styles or vase or anything like that, when that's not actually where the problem arises. But if you sit pretty for a few moments of your life, I promise you we can solve these issues. Well, let's get to it. The fundamental understanding that you need to have is around labeling or keywords. When we use prompts, we use various labels that the AI then observes and then matches those labels to patterns it knows we're trying to get after. For example, with the model illustrious, masterpiece, or aka S tier, essentially it's saying give me all the S tier art or the S tier patterns that you've observed that are under the umbrella label masterpiece. But by virtue of doing that, we take the uncanny valley approach in a big way, because we're getting all of that art that has no flaws, that has weirdly perfect lighting, incredible symmetry, and if you're using a checkpoint that it was optimized for masterpiece, high res, extraordinary detail, things like that, these are all labels that tend to veer very high into the unnatural perfectness or perfect symmetry and all of those things. Which triggers, for a lot of us, an uncanny valley-like effect when we see something we think, something's off here. Now, the answer is not to forego the masterpiece keyword, because it's a superpower of a keyword. It's basically saying, like, give me great composition, give me great structure, give me right proportions. But we don't want to keep all of the other things. So we want to use the best parts that make up masterpiece, which is a fantastic structure, fantastic balance. We want the face and the bone structure in the face to look like a human face and to not look super distorted or crazy. So we want to keep all of the compositional gains that were given to us by high details and masterpiece, but not the uncanny valley aspects of masterpiece, such as really glossy and perfect and like no blemishes skin, sharp lines with no flaws whatsoever. We want to forego those and keep the structure and the overall composition of the image. And lighting is also a weird one that often triggers this kind of effect of like, oh, something looks a little off. So the formula goes essentially like this. Once you have an image where you like the overall composition of, cool. Then the next thing that we need to address is kind of reintroducing flaws, or processing is probably a better way to phrase it. So things like slight bits of noise, like static noise and things like that are really impactful. Things like adding a little bit of blur so that everything's not so crystal clear and absurdly sharp. All these things can basically make your image look a lot less perfect. And whenever you ask the AI to like introduce noise or static or some sort of like processing, like natural looking image processing, or whatever you want to, whatever label you want to give it, or whatever keyword you want to use, or whatever prompt you want to use, sometimes the AI doesn't know what you actually want. This is why LoRa's come in a big way, so that it exactly knows what you're trying to go after. You're not looking for noise, you're looking for aesthetic noise, which is a different thing. Alas, I'll streamline all this. But first and foremost, let us get a good baseline image to then de-perfectify, I guess, because again, we want to use Masterwork to get that baseline structure. So here we go. So right now on screen, you are seeing our series that we are kind of doing on our channel, where we basically we type into Google bad art, and then we are given art. Honestly, it's not that bad, but alas, I wanted to show that you can take some not so great art and drastically improve it via doing a bunch of things. So we have a whole video based on just this. You can go check that out. It's probably linked in the description down below. But right here, we basically run it through a line art control net. Then after doing that and generating a couple images, we finally have a composition that we kind of agree with and we like, and then we make a line art of that, which is pretty fun. We can start rendering until we find something that we generally like. Now this looks pretty good, but it doesn't look very pretty. It kind of looks like a little scuffed, a little bit rough around the edges, which is kind of what we want. But again, we also want to tap into the absolute superiority of the Masterwork label, essentially telling the AI, hey, give me all of the S tier options instead of all the kind of chaff. So we do that and we get this. Extremely pretty, right? But it is triggering in a lot of ways the kind of uncanny valley, or this looks really AI generated kind of switch in your head. Now, why is that? Well, I think it's really interesting to kind of break down. There's a ton of reasons why, but one of them I think is the extremely glossy skin. There's something about the skin and the shine and how everything looks so perfect when it comes to the lighting and how the sheen on the neck and all these things look too perfect. Now, another thing outside of just the skin texture, it's the lighting. Again, perfectly well lit face with very little shadowing. If anything, there's just a little bit right here from the neck, and the arm is kind of shadowed, and it just looks all way too quote unquote perfect. So we want to keep the overall nice and clear aesthetic of this, like, you know, prettiness, but we don't want to keep all of the perfection. But now that we have a really good baseline image, we're good to go. This is essentially where the point that you want to get to. And this is actually a really easy point to get to. Again, link in the description to that video that will take you through how to do this with any of your old art or anything, really. Well, not anything, that's a whole other video. Alas, I'm doing my best. So now that we have our image, we want to introduce kind of distortion or static or grain or noise. All the above. So essentially there are 2 LoRa's in the description down below. Just go to them. It will take you to Civitai, and we are going to just download them, and I'll walk you through how to do that right now really quickly. Essentially, you're going to want to download this LoRa, which is fantastic, called Touching Grass. SDXL, that is the model this is compatible with. Hopefully you're using some of the models that we like to use around here, like Perfect Illustrious or Plant Milk. Again, that Plant Milk one, weird name. Anyways, regardless, point is what this is essentially going to do, it's going to add a little bit of grain to your images, making it look a lot more, well, less perfect and a little bit processed. As you can see here, there's grain here. There's just a little bit of post-processing there, which is really nice. And these are the keywords which you're going to have to use either in your prompt, but I would highly suggest just putting these into your base template. Once again, you're going to hit download, and then when you hit download, you're going to need to go into your Krita AI LoRa folder, which if you don't know what that is, you would go over here, we go up to this, we go to this button. This will tell you where your Comfy UI model is located. Then we're going to go into here, we're going to go into models, then we're going to go find LoRa, and we're going to place that in here. I would highly advise segmenting them via illustrious or characters or anything like that. And you're just going to drop that in there. Fantastic. When that's there and that's downloaded and that's placed in that right folder, then we're going to go over to your styles and you're going to go over to your presets and you're going to pick whichever one you actually want to use. In this case, we are going to go over to add, we are going to go over to this, and then we are going to go find Touching Grass right here. Boom. We're going to hit that go and we're going to open this up, and you can see that I have already added these keywords in there for this, so it'll automatically switch. But if you didn't, you're going to want to paste those keywords. Touch grass, copy that. Film grain, copy that. Grainy texture, copy that, and then post all of those within this right here, right here, sorry, right here. Boom. Now that should work. Now the second model you're going to want to download is this one up here, VHS noise effect. Honestly, if I could only suggest one, it would be this one. This one has a really, really cool effect, and we can see it in action right down here. We can see with one activation of it, it's not that crazy. With 1.5, it's a little bit more noticeable, but with 2, holy moly, is that really, really prominent. We're going to want to stick with less is more on this. Also, they give the tip to use sweat as your negative prompt, because I believe the way this distortion ends up panning out is it ends up making a character look a little bit more glossy, and we're trying to actually avoid that. So it's just perfect to always chuck that in. Good to go. And the same process can be said for that over here. I think I actually have a template here. So this has both of those things applied. It has touching grass and again, the right corresponding keywords. And then same thing for this one, film grain, same thing. Once again, that keyword is right here, film grain, that's where you put it. All right, great. So now we have our LoRa's installed, and we're going to mess around with the weight of this. Now, personally, I would highly advise you just copy what I have right here, which is for the kind of weird distortion look. We're going to go with 50, very, very light, not that high. In fact, some of you might want to lower this even more. And then you're going to want to go to touching grass, and then you're going to want to lower that to 70. All right, great. All right, so there is a lot of stuff that we can do now that we have our LoRa's applied. By the way, I would suggest actually decreasing this to around 30, because otherwise you can get some artifacting happening. So decrease this to 30 and you're good to go. Now, actually, I would suggest, after more testing, I would suggest you actually download something called Plant Milk XL. This is an illustrious-based model, but it is significantly more grounded. I find it has a much more natural look. This was designed by the baseline of Illustrious here, which is in here. It's called Nova Anime XL. It's a variant of the Illustrious model. This one is as well, but it's significantly more natural looking, I believe, called Plant Milk. There's a whole video where I teach you guys how to install LoRa's, models, and Vase. I would highly suggest that video if you're interested in that. Here are the heavy metrics that are going to massively move us in the right direction. So, fun fact, we actually don't need to actually completely erase Masterpiece and stuff like that. That'd be kind of a headache to do every time. But what we do need to do is signal to Masterpiece that we don't want some variables that are housed within it. So, for instance, we don't want like weird, perfectly glossy skin and things like that, or plastic looking skin, or overly shiny, or overly airbrushed, and things like that are big negatives when it comes to looking too perfect, right? So I basically made you guys a stack of negative prompts just to plop in here, and then you want to set the thing to around 2, and then you'll be good to go. Again, we don't want hyper detailed and things like that. So then you're going to want to equip the Plant Milk model, call it good. this one. Perfect. So then with our control net applied, we're going to want to go ahead and hit generate at 100% capacity, 100% capacity. And that will give us something like this, which looks a lot more grounded. So the fun thing is you can use a model that is really good at giving you like the best output composition, face structure ever. And then you can use a different model that has a more natural look to kind of give you a more natural look, especially when you're using control nets. It will keep a lot of the composition you like in play. And this alone, I think, is fantastic. This is plenty enough to get by. But if you wanted to go a step further, what you could do essentially is this. You could take our base model and you could apply a slight blur to it. So essentially, you're going to go up here to filters. You're going to go over to blur. You're going to go over to Gaussian blur. Gaussian blur. Then you're going to select around 2%. You want very, very little. 2%, as close as you can get. Hit boom. I already did this. This is why this already looks a little bit glossy opposed to the one we just looked at. And all this is going to do is give a little bit of blur and distortion. And this is really important. You're going to want to decrease your strength to around 30%. For me, I can't quite get around perfect 30, so we're going to go with 32, around 9 iterations. Fantastic, or passes. Fantastic. We're going to hit render or generate, and we're going to see a very subtle change, but it is still going to be a change when it comes to the perfect version, which is this, super sharp still. We go over to here. There's a slight bit of blur right here. Her eyes are still clear, but it looks a little bit more like camera baked. And things like that. So you end up having a lot more natural of a look. And once again, you can change this to pencil art, to something else that looks a little more natural and various different styles that you want. But honestly, the only thing you're really trying to do is decrease the level of the glossiness of the skin and all the things that trigger something looking a little too perfect. And ultimately gives it kind of a nice filter or aesthetic that makes it kind of mask some of the AI weirdness, right? Also, sorry I chose a woman flipping you off to kind of render out. Little rough. I think you're great, just to tell you that it's not a subliminal message. Anyways, yeah, but a big needle mover here is the models as well as the negative prompts. If you could only use anything, I would say use that. You could try to key in things like grain within your prompt, but I've just never seen that it actually works. Oftentimes it doesn't apply it enough and you end up trying to increase the prompt weight and it just doesn't get you what you want. This is why I suggested those two flwrz and why we use them. And of course, you want to get the plant milk model. That really does help, especially giving you a more grounded, neutral look. It doesn't have so much intense, perfect lighting, has more of a natural lighting feel, which really, really helps. Alas, this was as easy and as streamlined as I could possibly make it. I hope you enjoyed, and I hope this makes a lot of sense. Again, the reason why we're adding blur is just to kind of give us a little bit of a softer edge. We can do that with other tools within Krita, but I wanted to make this as simple as humanly possible, but how to get a little more grounded look to your AI art. Also, this is a really good way to go about it without like drastically moving the needle as far as getting an entirely different type of composition that you want. So for instance, sometimes when you really try to overbake something, it can change the overall image drastically. So she has much more tanner skin now, and that may be something that you're not trying to go after. So this is a good way to kind of get your baseline image to kind of still keep the same characteristics that were in play. Now that you know how to make natural looking images using AI art, the next big step is usually always how to get more access to greater control with your output, aka your images. Not only do we have all of that over on our Skool community, as well as a ton of free resources, as well as a ton of free posts, as well as even more free courses for you to intake and enjoy. Everything from how to install Krita, how to set up the proper layouts to get the most optimal workflow, as well as the thing that we've kind of mentioned throughout this video, which is how to install the right flwrz and models. One of those models we covered was the plant milk model that to me I think gives a really good natural look and also just really good in general. In addition to all that, we also have a $40 paid course that covers just a massive data set of useful kind of tools. One of them is a fantastic framework called Quip, which is kind of the segmentation for your prompts, which gives you fantastic output. But the real value I think is within the prompt forge, which is just a nice layout of all the most impactful keywords and what they're essentially going to do for your image, such as like oil painting, what that's going to look like, things like ambient light and all of these variables that are massive needle movers when it comes to prompting. These are really, really strong labels or patterns that the AI can apply to your image. Fantastic. And lastly, we also made a super stack of control net line art, which can give you amazing access to complex composition. And within the video course associated with all of these things, walking through the whole value stack, I show you how to use that control net line art to do some incredible things, at least I hope. If any of that sounds interesting to you, head over to our Skool community and check it out. It's entirely free to join. And again, like I said, there's a ton of free resources there in general. And I will continue to stack on top of that until it is such a good deal that you have to at least acknowledge that you might possibly consider popping in and maybe uploading a piece of art on a post. Love to see it. Alas, hope I can see you there. Goodbye for now.